is Alyssa.
And I'm Tony.
And we are the Soultry Sisters. We're a community-based organization that empowers women to live healthy and creative lives in North County, San Diego, and recently, DC.
We curate events, workshops, mixers, and meetups centered around women's arts, wellness, and sisterhood.
Our mission is to empower women to live vibrant and shine bright through creative expression and conscious holistic living.
Our vision is to create a safe space that provides women the arts and wellness resources that are affordable and accessible.
So far, we've partnered with Dancing So Boutique, Village Rock Shop, Carlsbad Village Yoga Co-op, and nonprofit organization Leap to Success. To find out more information about us and to sign up for our future events, visit soultrysisters.com.
You can also find us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Soultry Sisters.
We hope to see you soon.
Hey, Soultry fam. Welcome back to our Soultry Hangout. This is it's been a minute, huh, Tony?
Yeah, it's been a whole summer season. Yeah. Because we did April. April was our last book club.
If you are tuning in with us live, this is our beginning of our fall series. September, we're going to be exploring conversation around friendship. So just to start, we want to just check in with y'all, give you a little bit of updates. I'll start first. I am Alyssa, and I'm tuning in from sunny San Diego. But in less than 24 hours, I will be in Washington, D.C., the DMV area, visiting Soultry Sister Tony.
Yes. So, hey, everyone. I'm Tony, the other half of Soultry, and I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. And I just moved into a new apartment. So if you have been tuning in, you know, my background is different. I got some new plants behind me, some new pillows, a new couch, a whole new everything. Okay.
New energy.
Okay. And I'm excited because since it's book club, I was like, I have to wear my book earrings made by at Tiny Tassel. So I'm so excited for our new season. And we had a season of rest. So after our summer solstice annual festival, we had a little bit of rest time. So I was in San Diego for a little bit, and then we were just kind of gathering ourselves to start our fall series.
Yes. And when Tony and I were dreaming about how we wanted to open this fall season with you all, we thought no better way than to do a book club to kind of ground ourselves in the season, but also to talk about friendship, especially coming off of the festival. We met so many new friends. We met so many new folks. And so to celebrate that, we want to dive into this book. We also had a lot of folks that came to the festival saying they're searching for new friends, people who just moved to San Diego area, people looking for folks who they're aligned with, who they feel they're in community with. So we're really excited to dive into this book because it really, for us, embodies why we created Soultry Sisters. And of course, we're going to get into all that as we go through the book. But starting off, let us know, how was your summer? Tell us where you're tuning in from and what you're sipping on.
Yeah, so you know where we're at, but what I'm sipping on. So it is so hot in DC right now, like literally like heat advisory hot. So I'm drinking some H2O water from my new cups. Okay, y'all, I'm not gonna get tired of saying everything's new. My new cups. And then I'm drinking it out of a mug, but it's just for cute aesthetics. But I'm drinking some sparkling pineapple juice, I guess. Yeah, sparkling pineapple juice from Trader Joe's, but in my cute new mug. So it's giving tea vibes, even though it's a summer refresher.
I also have something new. I have a new sippy cup, y'all. This new big sippy cup.
It's so big.
It is big, but dainty and big, sturdy and reliable. So for me, I'm really trying to drink more water, and I recently had to go and get my wrist checked out. Your girl got carpal tunnel, so I can't be screwing on and off a water bottle. So your girl's gonna be sipping away. Cheers to health and wellness. Cheers.
No, you have to go towards me.
Oh, sorry. Hold up. Wait.
No, the other way. Cheers.
Yes, it's been a minute, y'all, but we're happy to be back. And so let's talk a little bit about why a book club. So our goal for our book club is to choose books that promote soul care and align with the work that we do. The discussions that we have are an opportunity for us to share reflections and work through the book together. So unlike other book clubs, like we are going through the chapters, we are talking, we are discussing. It's not one of a one and done type of meeting. We really want to make connections with you all, even though we're meeting live here. We don't see your faces, but we do. When you comment, we do post your comments up on the screen. So we definitely want to see that. All are welcome. Whether you are reading along with us or a fellow soul care enthusiast or haven't even read the book yet, we invite you to join in this discussion. We've heard some people listen to it for the replay during their walks, while they're doing their dishes, and some people actually do grab a book and sit down and discuss with us. So definitely choose a way to participate and engage that suits you. So without further ado, we're going to talk about the book we're featuring, Platonic.
Yes. Our reading Platonic. So Alyssa gifted me the book for Christmas. Yeah.
Yes.
So I've had the book in my possession for many months now. But I ended up reading it in the spring / I think early summer, around the time we were doing the festival. I had read it. Finally, actually listened to the audiobook. So a tip for y'all, if it's kind of hard for you to like sit down and actually read a book, I advise, get the audio book. You can either rent it from your local library if you have the app for your library, or, do Audible. But that's kind of an easy way, especially if you're part of our Step and Stride Challenge to habit stack. So when you're on your walk, you can then listen to our book. So that's an option. But we thought it'd be a great time to read Platonic because, especially after coming from our festival, when a lot of people, like Alyssa mentioned, are looking for community, looking for meaningful connections, we're like, why not share a book that's all about that? And especially for us, like our background as military kids, we grew up moving around every couple of years. And so finding community was always so important to us. And like we had to learn at an early age the importance of sustaining friendships near and far. And so that's also kind of the backstory of Soultry, is because we wanted to create a community and cultivate that space for people to, be around like-minded people in our community of North County, San Diego. So it's really at the root of why we do what we do. And so we thought this book would be a great way to reflect ourselves, for ourselves, and also to share with you all and discuss, like, what does it take to make meaningful friendships, especially as adults. It's like really hard. And then how do we, engage with each other, especially since we're, community leaders? How can we use this book to kind of help us cultivate those spaces?
Exactly. And we have Adrian Kapatid, sibling, tuning in from the LA area. Thank you for tuning in. Tell us if you're listening like via podcast. Are you doing some stuff around your house? Are you up and about? We love to hear how you are engaging with our Soultry Hangouts. And so let us know in the chat if you're familiar with the author, Dr. Marisa Franco, if you've heard of their work talking about friendships, if you've read the book, let us know in the chat.
And a fun fact about Marisa as well is that she went to the University of Maryland and was a professor there. And she lives in DC. I don't know if she currently lives in DC or when she was writing the book she did, but so that's really cool too, since I live in the DMV area. So that's always nice to know other people, just like when we did our last book club with the Afro Minimalist, Christine is based in DC. So that's always cool to connect with people in our communities.
Yes, exactly. A couple of our artists, artists and writers have been from the DMV area, the Afro Minimalists too. That's really cool. And so Adrian is tuning in through YouTube Live. So we're here on YouTube Live and Facebook Live, and they're actually cultivating much needed rest and boredom. We love that. And been in the process of calming and revitalizing my nervous system. Well, friend, you came to the perfect spot. Grab something to drink, relax, and just listen along.
That's awesome. And Speaking of YouTube, if you haven't already, you can go and subscribe to our channel so you'll be alerted when we go live. It'll pop up right on your home screen. And what's exciting, when I checked our YouTube earlier today, we had 111 subscribers, and we're all into angel numbers. So that's really awesome. So we're over 100 subscribers, which is really great because that's how we know that y'all want more of our YouTube videos. So we love doing the book clubs on YouTube, and just check it out because we have all types of other videos on there.
Exactly. Definitely. If you are a part of our Soultry Sanctuary, you know that after our book club, that you will have unlimited access to all of our previous book clubs, and especially this last one that we're doing. So just a little bit what to expect from our book club. Every Wednesday this month, we will be meeting here on YouTube and Facebook Live, 4:30 PST and 7:30 EST. Each week, we're going to discuss about 2 chapters. Tony and I, we love to get into the chapters. So our goal is to get through 2 chapters. We invite you to join live to share your reflections. You can join like a traditional book club where you got your book, you have your notes, and you're engaging in the comments. You can listen along like a podcast while you're on a walk. You can also comment later if you're catching the replay. We are all about accessibility. So if you are tuning in later, we still feel your presence through the comments, fam. So make sure to do that if you're listening to our replay. And a little bit about the author. No, Tony, you already said that already. So should we go into that?
Well, yeah, so I was just going to say, last thing of the announcements is that
yes,
because we do these book clubs as part of our free programming, we would love if you donate and support to us. So our Venmo and PayPal is at Soultry Sisters on all platforms. So just like all of our handles, so you can Venmo us or PayPal if you are feeling generous, if you're feeling abundant and want to pay it forward, because this program, we don't charge, we just go live, but we thought it'd be a great way to, invite our community to support us if that's something that you're feeling abundant in, or you can send it to someone else. Also, subscribing to YouTube is a way that you can support us as well. So yeah,
we have all forms of support, y'all, to keep our sustainable programs going. So a little bit about the author, Marisa G. Dr. Marisa G. Franco works as a professor, like Tony was mentioning, at the University of Maryland, and she writes about friendship for Psychology Today, and has been featured has been a featured connection expert for a majority of publications like the New York Times, the Telegraph, and Vice. She also has a TED Talk. So if you're part of our Soultry Sanctuary, this morning I posted her TED Talk talking a little bit about the book and the importance of friendship. And Tony and I, the reason why I got this book for Tony for Christmas is because we listened to Therapy for Black Girls podcast, and she was interviewed on there. And so that really inspired us to get the book and then read it here. So we just wanted to shout out, name a little bit about the author, but also that we learned through the podcast, Therapy for Black Girls.
Yeah, so September is all about friendships for us. So first we wanted to start off by asking you all, before we even get into the book, what does platonic mean to you, right? Because that's the title of the book. And it kind of tells you a little bit with the subtitle, but not really, right? So like, what is platonic? Or you can even comment below what you usually hear when people use the term platonic, and like, what does platonic usually refer to?
Yeah, for me, when I was first thinking of the word platonic, I was thinking the word like close, but not romantically close. That's what I was thinking. Platonic is someone who's close to you, but there's no romantic relation or no attraction. And when people like, oh, I'm platonic friends. That was my first, I guess, relationship to the word, or how people would use it around me. Platonic friends, or platonic, the word.
Yeah, I feel like similarly, I think of platonic before this book of like being opposite of romantic. So it's like platonic and romantic, and that they're not the same. That there's 2 different types of relationships, I guess. So you can have like platonic types of relationships or romantic type of relationships. And I feel like platonic, in my understanding before, was like friends. So like friends equal platonic. And then if you have lovers or partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that's romantic. And so I had been, I guess, conditioned that they're like separate buckets. And that I did feel like growing up, when you hear platonic, or even as like a younger adult, like platonic is like, if you have a friend who's platonic, then there's like only certain things that you would like do with them, or like, especially if you have like a guy, like if you're heterosexual and have a guy friend, then there's like certain things you do with the guy friend versus a guy lover or boyfriend partner. And so that's where I feel like those distinguishing things would be made like more apparent.
Yeah, before this book, especially after reading the first chapter, my understanding or relation to platonic was like without intense feeling. Like you don't get like a certain like because I have best friends and then I have platonic friends. I also had a different category for like best friends and platonic, and I don't know why, but the word platonic for me was just like plain, like associate. But there's a word, but there's a word for that, an associate. But then I read it and I was like, wow, I really got these definitions wrong. This book reminds me of Atlas of the Heart, and how a lot of definitions, we have assumptions of depending on how it was introduced to us in the setting is how we associate the meaning. And for me, platonic has always been like, oh, this is just a platonic friend. It was never like a thing that to be, oh wow, I have a platonic friendship. It was either something highly regarded. I come from a background to regard like family and romantic partners, but not platonic. And when someone is a friend, they become family. Then I call them a sister or cousin or tita. I upgrade them in a name that is underneath family. So I was just like, wow, I really do just have two compartments, is family or romantic. But this book has expanded that definition. It made me realize I actually have more platonic friends for positive reasons in my life than I thought.
Yeah, so definitely comment below. Even if you're tuning in from Facebook as well, we'll see those comments. So Facebook or YouTube, you can comment. But yeah, platonic, I do feel like there is a different connotations. And if you're wondering what Atlas of the Heart is, you can go to our YouTube and see the first episode of that book club we did last fall. Last fall.
Last September.
And then if you're part of the Sanctuary community, then you can get access to all the episodes. But that's what that was. But yeah, so that's a little like, I guess, icebreaker into what platonic is and what we're going to be learning and unlearning as we journey through this series this month. And so today we're discussing part 1. So this is looking back, like how we became the friends we are, right? Because again, like Sankofa, you have to look back to go forward. So again, if we want to create and sustain better friendships, we have to see, where do we actually come from, right? And so today we're discussing part 1. So that's chapter 1 and 2. So chapter 1 is how friendship transforms our lives. And I really enjoyed chapter 1. Yes. That's all I'll say right now. But I really appreciated that the author took the time to be like, this is why friendship matters. I think that's literally a subtitle.
Yeah, I think another subtitle was connecting with others makes us ourselves. And I love that too. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, I really appreciate that Dr. Franco has taken the time to really help ground us in the importance of it. Just like Bell Hooks with love. It's giving me that same vibe of like these everyday things that you think about, or people, like the concepts of friendship and love, and how society can make them seem so like lighthearted, when really friendship and love are like at the core, the essence of our humanity and existence. So again, this guy kind of gave me flashbacks of like my new relationship with love from reading all about love. So I'm excited to share with y'all some of the quotes from this first chapter that really enlightened us. Tony, you want to share the first one?
Yeah, so the first one I wanted to share is for our life to feel significant, we crave someone to witness it, to verify its importance. And that's on page 6. So as we begin the book and write, and I really deeply resonated with this quote because I feel like a lot of times, if you're calling, like if I'm calling you, my sister, or any of my best friends, there really is like, to vent. And I think a part of venting is for someone to witness what you're experiencing. So I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful way to word, what friendship can be. And I feel like that's also what distinguishes when you were talking about like a best friend. I feel like a lot of times is those people who have witnessed these different parts of us throughout our lives, and they're here through it all, right? That long-term, I guess, commitment in a way, which we'll kind of get to later in the book, but yeah.
It's like when our friends call us like, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing? What you been up to? Those are people who want to witness and know like how you spent your day. It could be as simple as that, but that is a question of an inquiry to witness each other. And so the first part we wanted to highlight in chapter is friendship and philosophy. And I love some of the philosophy elements she shared. So Italian scholar Marsilio Ficino, I don't know if I'm saying that right, coined the term Platonic love in the 15th century. The word reflected Plato's vision of a love so powerful it transcended the physical, and it was a pure love of one of for someone's soul. And I was like, hold up, Soultry sister, thinking of your love for someone transcends the physical. And for me, like before, I was thinking a platonic love is something less deep, more on the superficial level. But the 15th century, they coined platonic love as something deeper, more elevated, more spiritual.
And that part too, I really appreciated them talking about. Let me see, page 6. It was kind of rooting us in the history of what Platonic meant as well to those philosophers, which I thought was really helpful to ground us in like why she chose the title Platonic and why we're talking about friendship. So she kind of goes through the history of Platonic love and how back in the day, friendship was regarded in a certain way and how now that's kind of transformed, but she's also highlighting how it's also kind of the same. So I thought that was cool for her to talk about these past examples of these like philosophers and Abe Lincoln and all that stuff, and like highlight that like people have had different types of connections with people, whether that's platonic or not, for centuries, right? It's just maybe we haven't always labeled them as one thing or the other.
And also, I like the one quote that says, without friendship, no one would choose to live. I was like, wow, that's deep. Like people really revered friendship as a willing to live. So yeah, like I like how she started with the philosophy of it, and then it moves into friendship in science. And this is where it gets into the wellness part, y'all. The impact of loneliness is akin to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you're not really a philosophy bae, if you're not a philosophy girly, well, let's hit you with the science. The feeling of loneliness can, really impact our health. And another quote is the most pronounced difference between happy and unhappy people was their level of social connection. And I can feel that because, being able to see my friends more often now between like the time we had previous years, I definitely felt like being able to connect in various ways, whether it's through social media or through events, has contributed to my level of social connection and my happiness in life.
Yeah. And also on page 7, she shares that. So I guess I'll just expand upon the quote that you just shared. So she said, psychologists theorize that relationships like oxygen, food, and water are necessary for us to function. When stripped of them, we cannot thrive, which explains why friendship powerfully influences mental and physical health. And she says, scientists have found that 106 factors influence depression. Having someone to confide in is the strongest preventer, right? So all of that is to give background and context and evidence that friendships matter, right? So friendships are not frivolous. Friendships are not just for when you're young and for your inner child.
Mm-mm.
It's for health. It's for longevity, right? I'm sure there's probably a study somewhere that says like the longer you live is probably like how many friends you
Yes,
have.
there's a documentary on Netflix right now talking about people who live to be 100, and it wasn't these people weren't trying to fight off death by eating a certain amount of food or doing a certain amount of exercise. They really were just living their life, and they had a lot of social networks. That's what kept them alive, is their attachment to other people outside of themselves. And so if you want more data, here in the book it talks about how different things that decrease our risk of death. And so exercise decreases our risk of death 23 to 30%. Diet decreases our risk of death 24%, but large social networks reduce our risk of death 45%, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, having a good social network is almost 50% as effective of decreasing like your risk of death than diet and exercise. So
Mm-hmm.
people who say, "Oh no, I'm going to go to the gym instead of seeing my friends," or how about you stack it? Go for a walk with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a lot of growth for us as a humanity, as people, they don't happen in isolation. And that's why I value group exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And this is proof why. I was like, yep, that's why I'm a group fitness girly. I don't like working out alone. I've never enjoyed going to the gym and like being by myself. I've always enjoyed, every time I go for a walk, I'm like, hey, Tony, what's up? I call a friend. And Tony and I, we teach Soul Flow, twice a month. We like to move in community. So that's a reason why we like to do those practices, because it's a motivator. But hey, y'all, it's better for your health.
Right. So that's nice to see the science behind that this really is helpful, and that there's studies that show that having friends, having these meaningful connections can improve your health. So again, she starts sharing more about why friendship matters. So another quote we wanted to share is, "We choose our friends, which allows us to surround ourselves with people who root for us, get us, and delight in our joy." And I feel like right now there is like a real like a movement for joy, right? And on social media, it's like people are posting about joy. In Soultry, we have talked about joy in our different workshops. And so I appreciate that she highlighted that having friends is a choice, right? Like we choose that. When she compares it to like family, who, a lot of times we're just inherited these different things that we want. We can't always choose that. And then also with like partners, sometimes there's different things that come with that kind of relationship. But she really talks about how friendship is kind of more freeing. She kind of pictures it as, or depicts it as.
She also talks about it like it's the friendship is the most freeing relationship, because there's so much flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that goes into the next quote. So if you want to share that one.
Sure. When choosing friends, we are freer to prioritize the truest markers of intimacy, such as shared values, trust, admiration of each other's character, or feelings of ease around each other. That's on page 10. And I feel that. I feel like when we think about our friends, there's less pressure for them to be anything other than themselves. And I feel like in my experience, my friendships is where I've been able to really see more of my character reflected with the friendship. So yeah, I really think that, like, let us know how you feel. Do you feel like friendships are the truest markers of intimacy? Because I feel like for me, when I think of intimacy, until I read this quote, again, my idea of intimacy has been in the past, before All About Love, linked to romantic partnerships. But again, just written in a different way, I'm reminded that intimacy is the ability to see yourself outside of oneself, to connect through your values, to be able to witness someone else. That's intimacy.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that she brought up intimacy, and especially with the original terminology of Platonic, talking about that deep soul connection. I feel like as the term has evolved into now 2023. I feel like platonic is now, what do you call it? The connotation is that, oh, it's something lighthearted, like you said, like easy breezy, whatever. But when she's talking about friendship and platonic relationships, she's talking about intimacy, trust, this deep connection. And I was like, oh, that's kind of how now my friendships have evolved as I become older. Like I have really deep friendships, but I don't know if everyone has that. And and also there's like a whole dialogue being had that like women typically have like really deep, intimate friendships compared to men's friendships tend to be not as deep. And I think the book How We Show Up talks about that too. But yeah, I think it's interesting when we talk about intimacy with friendship because I feel like some people, still have that kind of separated.
Yeah, and I want to share too that it's making me think you're as we're staying on this quote and topic of intimacy is that my platonic relationships and my friendships has been a healing space for me to heal from my wounded like romantic relationships, my past romantic relationships that did were not as healthy. So being shy to pursue romantic relationships, I inadvertently dove into platonic relationships thinking, oh, it's gonna be light, I'm just gonna like be with my friends. But I was surprised of how deep of an intimacy and connection I've developed when I've chosen to intentionally focus on my friendships with my platonic friends or my platonic friendships. I keep using that word, but yeah, just friendships in general versus focusing on romance. So yeah, like I have a new freer sense of what intimacy can look like for me versus I can only get intimacy from a lover, from somebody that I'm pursuing also a romantic partnership with.
Yeah, I think in my personal life that shows up as like who I call my soul sisters. And my sister friends, I feel like, yeah, we have that deep connection that, yeah, we trust each other. We're able to like just see each other so authentically and like hold space for each other through like just the ebbs and flows of life. And it's been so beautiful to see like each of us evolve and like to be there for each other and to witness like our different transformations, to be, a shoulder to cry on, a listening ear, all of that. I feel like I have witnessed that with like the people who I really do call my soul sisters. And that's kind of why we built Soultry Sisters, because we're like, oh, we want a space for people, to build those kind of connections and to meet people like this. And so, yeah, it's definitely something I feel like I have in my life. I think I just don't always use these terminology. So that's what's helpful about reading these kind of books too.
And I think Dr. Marisa Franco also says like this book is not necessarily to shed light on something that we don't have, but to excavate and show us what has already been there. But the rubble has been our protection from ourselves. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But thank you, Adrian, for sharing this comment. Adrian says, this is so timely. Loneliness is something I've struggled with before, which become ultimately worse because of the pandemic. Yes, I hear you, friend. Loneliness is an epidemic that is happening. And that is why Tony and I, we want to shed our light and create community, whether it's virtual or in person, to witness everybody. And so we witness your comment. We witness like your thoughts and feelings. And we hope that you feel like Soultry Sisters is a community for you.
Yeah, and like loneliness is real. And especially, Adrian, like you mentioned, with the pandemic, it's harder because everything is virtual, right? Like we have like our lives and different programs we do virtually to help with that connection. So we can, even though we're at a distance, even though some type of, world events might happen where we can't meet in person. So we've created these online spaces like the Soultry Hangout was a space so we can kind of bridge that loneliness that was happening over the pandemic. So we feel you as well. And that kind of goes into the quote we wanted to share. So it says, a 2013 meta-analysis So that's a study found that friendship networks have been shrinking for the preceding 35 years, and the impact is grave, right? So even though we're more digitally connected through these online social networks, um, through that study was saying that people report having less friends than they have done in previous decades.
Yes, and they and like also that with the shrinking of social networks, there's a growing of social cynicism, which is a
Mhm.
negative view of human nature, a biased view against some groups of people, a mistrust of social institutions, and a disregard of ethical means for achieving an end. So with what we're going through right now, just like what's that word? Annihilation? Is that annihilism too?
I
Would that
think
be in this?
so, yeah.
Yeah, when you're just like like when you get numb. And so yeah, that lack of connection can lead to us being more cynical and like, well, no one's going to care, why even bother? And I feel like that's why it's so important for us to talk about this and to not just
Mhm.
let it be a light thing like, oh yeah, as we grow older, we just don't have friends anymore. Who said that? Who made that agreement? Remember who agreed that as you get older, you just have family and your kids and just people around you, your coworkers, you don't actually seek new friendships, right? So,
Yeah, and I was going to
yeah.
say that's why I think this book is also helpful, is that it's helping you get the tools and the language and the reflection. So yeah, if maybe you reflect and you're like, "Oh, I'm feeling lonely or I'm feeling sad or disconnected because of the people around me," right? Because maybe you do have people around you, but you're not connected to them, or it's not
Right.
meaningful, or you can't have that trust or that vulnerability with them, and that's okay. I think that's what this book is talking about. That's like, now you have this book as a tool, and through our series we'll go through other tools throughout each week, but like that you can actually cultivate the friendships that you want. So if your family, is not the support you want, if you're living your life in a different way and the friends you've had years ago just aren't what you need right now, like that's okay. Friendships evolve, and like I'm a proponent of that too, of like to really cultivate, your chosen family and who's really there for you and who, you want to be there for as well. So you can have that reciprocity,
Mhm.
that mutuality. Um, so I think it's okay to also let go
Mhm.
of friends. It's like, what is it? Like the no new friends.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
not
yes,
that
new
tribe.
friends. Yes.
Yes, new friends, and
Yes, new
yes to
friends.
cultivating like different types of friendships too, right? Because you can have soul sister friends, you can have acquaintances. There's levels to it, just like we have levels to like romantic dating.
Yes, they also talk like in the book, it's there's also a discussion about having multiple friend groups. So if you're like,
Hmm.
I'm good with this I'm good with my like my soul sisters or certain friend groups that you already have, it's okay to want more. More, please. Remember, it's about abundance. So may this be an affirmation, whether you're feeling a deficit or you feel like you already have friends, that you can never have too many friends. And with that said, we're going to go into the section of the benefits of friendship. We're just stating more of the case of why y'all friendships are good. So friendships may be necessary, but likely not sufficient to trigger systemic change.
Yeah, with this quote, some of the context behind it, she was also sharing how when you have a friend of a different social group or different
Mm-hmm.
type of group that you're not a part of, then that helps you understand and have more, I guess, humility and empathy for a different group, right? So if I have a friend who's not queer and they're friends with me and I'm queer and then they're just around me, then they probably will have more supportive feelings, thoughts, behaviors, to the queer community than if they have zero friends that are queer. So that's kind of
Exactly.
what she was talking about. So yeah, it's not going to change like all the big systems, but it's those granular kind of micro changes through having friends of different social groups. So that's one benefit. And then the next quote we wanted to share is, friendship is what gives romantic love its strength and endurance, right? So we've been talking about how a lot of times people paint, okay, there's platonic love, there's romantic love, and they're so separate. But in the book, she's saying, like, no, having friends helps you have more meaningful and long lasting romantic connections, right? Because then you'll have someone to talk to confide in, sometimes confiding about the relationship. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this just becomes healthy part of your life.
And another quote we wanted to share is, we don't assume that friendship is a second tier relationship. We act to make it so. I love that part. Like, we are conduit in this definition of what friendship can be in our lives. Compared to our families and romantic partners, with friends, we invest less time and are less vulnerable and share less adoration. So that's the effect when we don't invest in these friendships. They don't play a significant role in our lives. So again, if we want friendships to be more significant, we have to act as though they are important.
Exactly. So I think that's a whole thing of like, we've been socially conditioned that platonic means less important, but this book and through us like going through this and discussing, we can change that, right? We can unlearn and learn new. And another thing that she mentions is queer platonic. So she talks about friendships that go beyond social norms for platonic relationships. So she talks about someone who identifies as asexual and doesn't have like sexual relationships, but was like a third partner with a couple and was like co-parenting as a family unit, right? So there's like these different ways of being that also can open up when you open yourself up to platonic being a deep soul connection, right? And again, I'm just going to plug the book How We Show Up again, because How We Show Up really goes into this concept and about queer platonic and like cultivating your own kind of relationship. So if this is interesting you, then read How We Show Up as well, because these books are very similar of this kind of journey of cultivating your own meaningful connections.
Exactly. I love the thought of too like being curious of how your friendships can be I guess structured. It doesn't have to be whatever the definition's been given to us. So I like how this is like an invitation to think, oh, how based on my needs, how can my current support group help me attain that? The kind of lifestyle I want to have.
Yeah, and also with queer platonic, that concept is also kind of an invitation that like if you have a best friend and you want to live with them for the rest of your life, you don't want to live with a romantic partner, like that's okay. If you want to live by yourself and not with your romantic partner, but still, you know, have that deep connection, that's okay. So queer platonic also encompasses those types of non-traditional dynamics, which are
non-prescriptive.
Because usually it's a relationship escalator that like, oh, you drop off all your friends and you're just with your married partner and you have kids. So queer platonic kind of opens up those traditional binaries and those kind of ways of thinking.
Another quote is, the empathy we receive from our friends makes us whole. And to expand on that, she was talking about shame and how, especially in our teenage years, we can carry shame because we're going through a lot and not a lot is explained to us. We're like, what's going on? I'm growing hair here. I'm feeling this here. All kinds of information is coming at us. And during our teenage years, we're trying to define who we are. We're trying to root ourselves and like what I like, what I dislike. And I appreciate how she said that part of being able to share our shame and have somebody, you know, witness and accept us is how we become whole. We're like, oh, once you say it and someone just says, okay, then you're like, wow, I was making this more. I was carrying this all on my own. And really, I could have just let it out in the open. And she's used some examples of people having certain health conditions. And I just really appreciated that because I feel like she also says as you get older, you know, that kind of tapers off. You don't feel that as much. But I definitely made me think about back when I was younger and how when I felt like I could confide in my friend, like even if like, for instance, as a girl, like, oh girl, I just got my period. Can you check if I leaked or anything like so simple, but they're like, oh girl, I got you. Like, I'll let you know. Don't worry. That release of shame of like someone has my back. Someone's not going to let me get out here in this world. Someone's going to protect me from feeling that vulnerability of being like called out or embarrassed. So, I mean, I'm using a very lighthearted thing, but in those instances in my teenage years, when I felt like I could ask a friend to check me, that
Mhm.
was made me feel like, that I had someone there for me.
Yeah, and I think also like just friendship making us whole is like really important. I think also when we're in adulthood, because it's very important when we're in those pivotal years when we're
Right.
younger. But in adulthood, once we are becoming more of ourselves and we're more sure of ourselves, like, oh, I like crystals, I like to travel, I like plants, whatever. If we realize that our like core group of friends or family don't have those same interests and needs or wants and desires, I think that's also when that disconnect and that loneliness
Mm,
starts to seep in. So then when you create new friendships as an adult, I think it's so meaningful too, because you're
yeah.
literally, it's a choice. It's like, oh, these are the people who I want to be around, who make me whole, who help me feel like my authentic self. And so I think that's also really powerful of friendships is that, especially as an adult, it's really a choice.
Hmm. And this next quote: friendship radically alters how we relate to others. It's the first relationship where we value another's welfare as much as our own. And I think it was really cool to see like how she was talking about how it comes from our childhood. Like our first
Mhm.
friend is when we learn to think outside of ourselves because with our parents, we're taking, like, I'm hungry, like,
Mhm.
give me mom and dad. And then for teacher, it's like whatever to like I obey. Like I just don't want to get in trouble. So like avoiding getting in trouble, and we have all these needs. But our friends is when we see ourselves in someone else and we build that empathy.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting because I was like, huh, I never thought. And like that's why some like
Mhm.
they at that age is important to go out and play, have a
Mhm.
friend, because you're not going to get that same feedback from a parent or a teacher. You need those people on the same level as you to be able
Mhm.
to cultivate and develop this quality.
Yeah, I think that's so important when we think of kids, especially because some people in our community are, parents or caregivers of kids. And so it's like, yeah, at that age, it's so important for them to have play dates, to have friends. I remember like one of my first best friends, Corey. I don't remember much about her, but I know I had a little baby doll that I also named Corey because I just
Mm-hmm.
loved that friendship so much that I then had a baby doll that I took care of, right? So it's kind of that. It's like how we relate to others. I was like just so touched by this friendship I had with the girl Corey that I had this baby doll that I also wanted to like nurture and be around. So yeah, it's little things like that. Like when you just think, oh, that's kids playing or whatever, and you're like, oh, I guess it's kind of a deeper thing, and it's a part of cultivating us to be great humans as we get older.
And it teaches us to build that empathy. Like for me, like, you know,
Hmm.
a sibling, we learn to share, we learn to
Hmm.
cohabitate with and share our toys and share our time. And I definitely felt that because I like when with you, Tony, like, and so I'm thankful that I was able to build that empathy. And then expanding on that, relationships are our primary means for expansion. Like how we see ourselves is also how we see our friends. And so and so to expand on that, she was talking about how when your friend accomplishes like this big hike and you're happy for them, it makes you think, oh, well, what if I were to go for my goal? Then maybe I could complete it. So we get
Hmm.
motivated by people around us, or even the saying of like you are a reflection of like your closest friends. And I
Hmm.
think that that is true. We do rub off on each other, which can be a good thing, but also can be a bad thing too. She also points out that that's why parents can be weary of people you hang out with because peer pressure. So if you do value somebody, you more likely might compromise yourself because you're close to
Hmm.
them, because there's that feeling of trust.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's so important to be so intentional with the community you're cultivating, right? So if it's important to you to travel and go on these new experiences, if you're around a circle of friends who are like, "Oh, you don't need to see that. Like that's not worth it. You're just spending your money. You need to save your money and do this." Like you're gonna feel like, "Oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do that," right? Or if you want to go to school and get a certain degree and like people are not really supportive of you, then you're less likely to feel motivated to do that and to accomplish it. versus if you're around people who have the same goals as you, who have similar aspirations, right? It doesn't have to be the same thing. Like, you know, Alyssa and I have different career fields, but like we help each other, you know, reach our goals by seeing and witnessing each other, you know, accomplish, you know, what we set forward. So I think that's what's so important as well, is like having friends that mirror, I guess, the best parts of yourself and kind of what you're striving for too. Because I have friends like that too, where like I might not be at similar places in our journey, but seeing them travel to a new place on a solo trip is like so inspiring. Like, oh, I want to do that one day. Or seeing them, you know, get a certain promotion is like, oh, that's so awesome that they're so dedicated to their craft, right? So I think it is very important, like who is around you,
Yes.
and to not lose hope if right now it's not who you want it to be. But even just that awareness is helpful as well, so you don't take in that like outside energy.
Exactly. And then another quote is, friendship is a relationship that wait, I wanted to add this other one. That was the last one. Hold up. Before we get to that one, to round out chapter 1, inclusion of others in self explains why we're extra susceptible for peer pressure coming from friends. That was from earlier. So we already got to that one. This last one to round out chapter 1 is, friendship is a relationship that allows the soul to grow more refined in practice, y'all. It is that relationship that allows the soul to grow refined in practice. And here we're always talking about building that soul care practice. And what better soul care practice now than friendship, y'all? Who would have thought that friendship is a soul care practice?
Right. And I just love that now we have this language, because with Soultry, that has been honestly at the core of why we even created Soultry, because we were like, we want to share this with our friends. We want to share this with people like us. And so to have friendship and meaningful connection be a core element of, you know, soul care, it makes sense. And I think that's why people gravitate towards our community, because a lot of people are like new to San Diego, or, you know, have these interests that their friends don't really have the same desire to learn about. So they're like, oh, I want to be around people who like get it, right? Or who want this, or a lot of people also might not even have interest. Like some people don't necessarily read all the time, but they're like, oh, Sultry's reading, like, let me try that out, right? Just like the other quote we talked about is like, you know, having a friend will make you more open to try new things or feel like it's something you can do. And so, yeah, I think the first chapter really did just hone in on like Sultry's purpose and like why we do. So that felt good for me to read, to be like, oh, this is like why we do what we do. And also in my personal life, I feel like, oh, that makes sense why friends have been so important, because that's why in this stage of my journey, I talked about it in a previous live about like relationship anarchy and not having this like escalator of like what relationships are important and what are not. But that's why, because I've always been like, oh, my soul sisters, my deep friendships have always been so important, and I would hate for a romantic connection to then just like stop those other connections from happening. So this book is giving me that context of like why I felt that inwardly and innately, and why I felt so connected to my friends.
I love that. And because we only have about 7 minutes, we might go over a little bit, but chapter 2, we're talking about, we're diving into how we show up in our friendships. And I think I'm going to ask you, Tony, maybe we can leave them with a little bit of homework, some food for thought with chapter 2, because if you don't know your attachment style, it's going to be better for us to kind of share, just kind of go over what the different attachment styles that the author is using to give context on how we show up in our friendships, but then to give you a little food for thought. And I'll also leave in the comments a quiz you can take via online if you don't have the
I think
book.
that'd be great. Yeah. So we're just gonna kind of introduce chapter 2. Then we'll go over some of the attachment styles. And then yes, your homework will be to explore and find out what your attachment style is currently, because it can change. And then we'll pick up where we leave off next Wednesday. So yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. Hey, see, we're learning to flow with it, y'all. So, chapter 2, how our past relationships affect our present. First quote we want to share is, we develop our attachment styles based on our early relationships with our caregivers, y'all. So, I'm going to
Mhm.
pull this up so I can read from the book because this is very important. Go ahead and sip
And
that
then you
tea.
can comment below if you know attachment style theory already, if you read
Mhm.
other books that talked about attachment style, if you know your attachment style from another book, you can comment below. But your homework will be to do the quiz from this book to see if it's a little different, especially because we're talking about platonic friendships here. So that
Mhm.
might have looked different if you read. I knew about attachment style more so to talk about romantic.
From this book?
Yeah,
Let
that
us know
book.
if this is the first. This is which is this the book you read to learn about attachment style?
It's
I
about
prefer this
attached.
one. I prefer. They're both good, but yeah. So for this one, we develop our attachment style based off our early relationships for our caregivers. So if our caregivers were warm and validating, we become secure. So we have a secure attachment. If they were instead unresponsive, cold, rejecting, or intrusive is, see, listen, it's not just absent, it's also
Mhm.
there a lot. If they bark at us to stop crying, then we develop an insecure attachment style. So let us know if
Mhm.
you lean towards secure attachment or insecure attachment when you think about your relationship to your caregiver. The other quote we want to share is, attachment is how we project onto, and well, I guess that's moving on to the next thing, but our attachment is how we project onto ambiguity in our relationship. So how we were treated by our caregivers then becomes how we see the world and how we
Mhm.
assume someone is going to treat us. So if you have an
Mhm.
insecure attachment style, it's how you protect yourself. So don't judge yourself if you have an insecure attachment style. Like, you can be a hybrid, and most of us, it's a spectrum. It's
Mhm.
not a this or that. It's not a category of a yes or a no. It's, in this instance, when it comes to caregiver, are you more insecure or secure? And then it can be different, vice versa, with your friendships if you had really good instances with your first friends.
Yeah, and so it is, which a lot of psychological theories are based on your like
Actual
childhood.
childhood.
um, so yeah, it does have you kind of reflect on like, okay, yeah, how was I, nurtured when I was a child? So yeah, I feel like on different quizzes before I've gotten like anxious avoidant,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense based on my childhood. But on this quiz, actually, I was given more secure. I was like,
Because it's leaning toward, because the questions were talking about friendships, how you show up in
yeah.
friendships, not relationships in romance. So I'm suspecting, oh wow, like, because of that too, because in attached, I came off as more anxious, like more anxious than secure. Um, but then in the friendship one, I got in this test, I got more secure with really low on an avoidant anxious, which I was surprised because I tend to be a more of an anxious person, but apparently not when I'm reflecting on questions when it comes to friendship. So that was a
Right.
relief.
And it can, and your attachment style can also change, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you took that quiz like a year ago, 2 years ago, excuse me, it's good to retake it because right now you could be in a different phase or part of your journey and it could look different. So, also, that's why we're going to invite you all to, reflect
Mm-hmm.
on it for this next week. So, next week, we can really talk about where we're kind of currently at in our styles. But we'll go over
So
each style now.
exactly. So let us know in the chat which one you are. So a secure attachment. Secure people assume they are worthy of love and others can be trusted to give it to them. This belief becomes an unconscious template that trickles into all their relationships, leading them to give others the benefit of the doubt, open up, ask for what they need, support others, and assume others like them and achieve intimacy. So, if
Mm-hmm.
if you're secure in your attachment, you most likely do not have a hard time making or keeping friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then anxious attachment is people who are anxiously attached assume others will abandon them. To keep themselves from being abandoned, they act clingy, are overly self-sacrificing to accommodate others, or plunge into intimacy too rapidly. This is team TMI.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if
Yeah, if you know
you
that person that you're like at a party or a work function and they're just like divulging information that you're like, yo, I did not need to know all of that about you. That
yes,
typically is like an anxious attachment style. And again, right, we're talking about attachment styles. It doesn't necessarily mean you're an anxious person or avoidant person or secure person through and through. It's just if the way you relate to others might be in this way. So that's
yeah.
again, it's not like a hard diagnosis and this is what you are.
Exactly. And then avoidant is avoidantly attached people are similarly afraid others will abandon them, but instead of clinging to avoid this outcome, they keep others at a distance. Intimate signals to them that they could be hurt. So they push others away, eschew vulnerability, and leave relationships prematurely. So
Mhm.
so think of an avoidant person who may appear cold. Maybe when you talk to them doesn't always reciprocate a question, but that might not be because they're uninterested. They might be afraid to start to build an attachment. Too
Yeah.
close
I
too
mean,
soon is not for them.
yeah. And also with avoidant, she kind of characterizes it as a person who like always makes everything into a joke. So if someone's trying to be vulnerable and talk about a serious, topic or situation, then the person might be joking, sarcastic, to kind of give distance in that dynamic. So it could be like maybe you feel really close to someone and then they're giving you like acquaintance vibes, and you're like, wait, I thought we had a deep connection. That could be because they have an avoidant style of attaching and relating to
Hmm.
people.
Exactly. So after hearing just the general definitions, if you haven't taken the quiz or read the book, let us know in the comments which one, or maybe even not which one, because I feel like we talked about that
Hmm.
spectrum, but in what situations do
Hmm.
you find yourself securely attached, anxiously attached, and avoidant? For me, when it
Yeah.
comes to like big social groups, I tend to be anxious if I don't know what to expect. I think that's why I prefer to be like the leader. I prefer to like host things because as an anxious person, I know what to expect. I know what we're eating. I know where the bathroom is. I know the general vibe, because it's kind of curated by yours truly. But me attending other people's gatherings, it requires me to feel secure by going with a friend. So like you won't find me going on
Mm.
solo dates and solo trips as much, only because I thrive when I have something to ground me in. At least I already know something. So if I know someone, that helps me dive into a newer situation versus completely by myself, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So that's a kind of way to think of
Yeah.
how you show up in more social instances versus like just a one-on-one. It could be also how you choose what kind of events and how you choose to engage. And knowing that about ourselves, like what I like about this is that it's going to give us a way to honor that and kind of not push ourselves, but be able to better communicate and decide how we're going to go about finding these new friends.
Yeah, and for me, I'm like the opposite. Like I can go to a new event knowing nobody. I can move to a new state, new island, knowing nobody, and I like thrive. Like I
Mhm.
make new friends quite easily. It's just I realized over the last like 3 to 4 years, it's like sustaining those connections that are new is hard for me. Like I have a lot of sustained long term friendships, but my new friends that I make, I feel like they kind of die off. Like I'll go to an event, meet someone, have a really good conversation, connection. We'll get each other's Instagrams, and then like nothing happens after
Mhm.
that. So I still have that like excitedness when I go to an event by myself, because I like the freedom of going by myself, because then I can stay as
Mhm.
long as I want. I can talk to whoever I want. I can eat whatever I want. I can go home whenever I want. It's just whatever I want to do. So I like that part about going to social places by myself. But yeah, for me, it's been like sustaining it. And then in the quiz or just reading the book, I realized that I'm more avoidant when it comes to conflict within friendships. Like that
Yes.
is where it's really tough. Like
Mhm.
I can make friends, I can, have these
Mhm.
deep conversations when it's like great things happening, or like
Yes.
not the interpersonal. But when it comes to interpersonal, if there's a conflict, if something isn't quite right, if something isn't quite gelling, I'm more of like, do we really need to talk about it? Like, I'm gonna just
Yes.
go over here and then go to this other event. So I
No,
realized that about myself.
yeah, no, completely. I'm avoidant with that too. I can relate. And another, so going on that, uh, kind of expanding on what we were saying is this quote: sustaining relationships with others requires a good relationship with ourselves. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's true. Because when I feel like I'm in a good place, I'm more in the mood to hang out. I'm more in the mood to call a friend, So just notice that about ourselves. And again, coming back to that vulnerability, it's like it's okay to, and like learning how we can communicate the need to talk and share. But because I know about myself, I do go internal when I'm not feeling so good with myself, which can be like a double-edged sword. Like when all things are good, I'm like, hey, everyone. And then I'm like, I disappear. So yeah, just know that.
Yeah, and the quote, which you touched upon earlier, but we wanted to share it again to really ground us in like why we're talking about attachment styles and how this relates to friends. So, finding security is finding our core. It's not about us transforming, but about us excavating, finding out who we are underneath the graves we've dug and pieces of us we buried for self protection. Right. So after you do this quiz, when you're reflecting over this next week, again, it's not to shame ourselves, it's not to make us feel bad. It's just to have that self awareness. That's part of healing, right? So you know what you did to protect yourself. Again, when you think of your inner child, like little Tony, what was she doing to protect herself? And so that kind of help you can give yourself grace if this is a little bit challenging to move through. Like that's okay. And then towards the end of the book, she's talking about, wait, I want to pull up the rest of the quote for the last quote I wanted to share.
Page
So the
58,
context.
y'all.
Yeah. So page 58. So again, we're talking about like why these attachment styles matter. And then how it's a journey to, if we're not secure, it can be a journey if we're anxious or avoidant in different parts of our lives to become secure. And she's kind of giving us, a reassurance that that's okay, that it's a journey. And then I'm trying to be brief. But essentially there was an analogy that is shared in the book of like how getting to secure attachment is an evolution. And so this person, Jared, had this analogy. So Jared was in the military and he took a trip to Saudi Arabia and arrived in an area dubbed the Empty Quarter because of its desert for miles. There was a sandstorm that night, the first night they were there, and once it was over, the clouds cleared. I looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw the Milky Way. It was breathtaking. I could not believe it. And I'm like, well, wow, this has been here the entire time. And I stayed up the rest of the night and watched the galaxy. Connection is our galaxy, and it's waiting for us. Let's find our way there. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to end chapter 2 and to close out part 1 of the book is that, connection, finding meaningful connections, becoming securely attached is there. Like we have it at our roots, at our heart of hearts. And through this book, through this series, we're going to find that for ourselves, each one of us. And it's great that we're doing a community because, this book is all about friendships and community. And so, yeah, I felt like that was just a great way to close out this first part.
Yes, in the comments, y'all, I shared a link to the song Find Your Way Back by Beyonce because after Tony shared that last analogy from Jared in the book, I'm like, yes, y'all, this is going to be the vibe of September. We're finding our way back to the joy of cultivating friendships. And speaking of cultivating and coming together, we thank y'all for joining us for our first discussion of the chapters 1 and 2 of the book Platonic. Let us know if you're going to be joining us for the rest of our sessions this month. We'll be meeting every Wednesday. If you enjoyed and benefited from this discussion, please donate and support to our Soultry Fund. You can donate on our Venmo and our PayPal to support this work. We also have some upcoming events. So if you're like, you know what, I really want to share space with the Soultry sisters. I'm really inspired to cultivate meaningful connections. Hang out with us. It's going to be a virtual workshop. We're talking about cultivating an altar. You can learn more by visiting soultrysisters.com/events, and you can sign up there.
Yes, so we can't wait to see you all next week. So follow us at Soultry Sisters on all platforms, and you can check out our book club at soultrysisters.com/book club. And we hope to see you all next week. You can do your homework. She's back.
I did this weird little circle double tap on the thing, and it just X'd me out. So, watch your fingers. I just kind of.
Oh gosh, but we'll see you all next week, and we're going to be doing part 2 of the series. So you can check out our website and visit our book club page to learn more about what is coming up. And yeah, we'll see you all then. Take care.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.